We've got some complexity to manage today as we depart from a Class Charlie airport, fly underneath a Bravo airspace, and arrive at an untowered field. Join me as we depart from VerticalSim's Sarasota International and arrive at VerticalSim's Plant City in the Cessna 152. Can we stay out of trouble without having a GPS to help us? We'll find out. Let's hop into the pilot's seat and get started. In my last C152 flight, I mentioned it would be nice to have a full C152 checklist, and here it is. So I didn't need to make it because somebody else already had. I'll put the link from flightsim.to, but this is an excellent checklist and we'll be using it as we get everything started up here. So we'll go through our cabin report. We're up to logging the Hobbs meter. That's over there on the right. We'll get the ignition on so we can check our fuel quantity. If you remember a few flights ago, I almost ran out of fuel, so it's always good to do that step. We'll get our flaps down. Now, normally we would do this because we would then exit the aircraft and walk around for the exterior inspection and check that the flaps are secure when we do that. However, we can't exit this aircraft, so we'll just pretend that we did a walk around. As we move on to starting the engine, we've got all of our documents. We'll do the passenger briefing shortly. Make sure our seatbelts are set, our brakes are test and secure, all of our circuit breakers are in, and then we'll head down here to the floor and get our fuel valve opened. Next we'll get our mixture to rich. Our carburetor heat, which is to the left of the throttle there, needs to be pushed in. That's cold. We'll turn on the beacon to let everybody know that we're about to start. We'll turn on the master and the alternator, get the throttle to 1/4 inch. Next we'll prime it. Move that out of the way. 1, 2, 3. Push that back in, lock it into place. Clear prop. Make sure nothing's turned on down here. And head over to the ignition switch. And ignition. And we'll bring our throttle to 1000 RPM. Next we'll check that our oil pressure is looking good. Now it says in the green sector, but it never is. It's always just at the left side of the green sector on this particular aircraft, and now we'll get our flaps all the way back up. We'll set the radios in a minute when I do the pilot's brief. We'll get our avionics all set up then too. And we'll get our transponder into standby. Alright, we'll get our frequencies all set up. So we are taking off from a Class Charlie airport. That means that we're going to talk to clearance delivery. They're going to almost certainly give us a squawk code. Then we'll have to talk to ground to get permission to taxi. Once we get to the hold short lines, we'll have to talk to tower to get permission to take the runway and depart. And then once we exit or approach the exit of tower's airspace, we'll have to talk to approach because there's 2 rings for a Class Charlie. You've got a tower ring and then you have an approach and departure ring, and they each have their own controllers usually. So that's a bunch of frequencies. We're going to start by putting in the ATIS frequency with clearance delivery on standby. On COM2, we'll get it set up for 121.5, which is guard. And then for the standby frequency, once I get issued a departure frequency, I'll put that on standby. We will be using both of our nav radios because we'll be using both of our course deviation indicators. Sarasota has its own VOR, so we're going to dial its frequency in, and you can see that it's already picking it up here on the ground, which means we can verify it if it's picking it up. So I'll go and turn on the speaker for nav radio 1. It'll play the Morse code. We'll compare that to what's on the sectional and verify that that is indeed the Sarasota VOR. And it is. Now for our second frequency, we're going to dial in Lakelands, which is near Plant City. We're not going to be able to pick it up from here, so when we do pick it up in the air, then we'll have to do the same thing, toggle on the speaker, listen to the Morse code, and make sure that we are actually following the right navigational aid. We'll bring up ForeFlight Web and I'll take you through the passenger brief. So we've got the sectional loaded up here. As I zoom in on Sarasota, you can see it has 2 magenta rings around it, indicating it is a Class Charlie airspace around the airport. The inner and outer go from surface to 4,000 and 1,200 to 4,000. The inner circle is controlled by the tower controller, and the outer ring is controlled by the approach controller. We'll need to talk to both of them to get out of the airport. Sarasota bumps up right against these blue lines. Those are Bravo airspace, and that is Tampa's Bravo airspace. The Bravo airspace is pretty complicated. It has circles, it has sort of irregular carved out sections. They each have their own starting and ending altitudes, so we've got some complexity here to manage. You can see that here is the borderline between the Charlie and Bravo airspace, and the Bravo airspace here starts at 6,000 feet. But if you jog over just one shelf to the left here, you can see that that shelf starts at 3,000 feet. Over here is 1,200 feet. So I want to fly 3,500 feet, which means I want to stay entirely in the 6,000 foot shelf. So we're going to plot our course to make sure we don't stray into that 3,000 foot shelf, which would bust the Bravo if we're flying at 3,500. Plant City is underneath the 3,000 foot shelf, so I'm going to need to descend below 3,000 before I enter that shelf. You can see that Plant City, like much of Florida, is near sea level. So Plant City has a field elevation of 153 here on the sectional. Now that means pattern altitude will be 1153. It's got a 3,900 foot airway, and there's the CTAF 123.05. I'll put that into standby on COM 1 once I am talking to departure, because that will be the next frequency that I will use. Off to the right here is Lakeland, which is a Delta, so we've got to also avoid their airspace. We have no GPS. How are we going to manage all that? Well, if I go back into ForeFlight and toggle it to satellite view, we're VFR pilots, right? We're going to use our eyeballs, and we're also going to use our VORs to help us a little bit. So I'm parked right here. I am expecting to get a departure off of runway 32, based on where the winds are, which means I'm going to fly this way. And then I'm going to want to turn right, overfly this golf course, and head for this nice body of water right here. So that should be really easy to spot. That's going to be my target. I'm actually probably going to get a heading and an altitude restriction from clearance delivery when I call them. So once I get here, then I've got a couple visual landmarks. So we've got some roads, we've got some water that's very distinctive that we can look for. We've got another large body of water that we're going to overfly. We should be able to see that from miles and miles away. We're going to continue along our course, and we've got some more distinctive geography, and again, another large body of water, so we're piggybacking from reservoir to reservoir here. And we've got another one, and that's going to take us really on a perpendicular approach directly to Plant City. We're going to enter the left downwind for runway 28. We looked at the sectional before, so we saw that both sides of the runway used a left pattern entry, so that's good. Off to the right here, we've got the Class Delta airspace of Lakeland, but we've got a road that's just outside of that, so as long as we stay left of that road, we don't have to worry about busting it. Alright, let's call up clearance delivery. Sarasota clearance, Cessna 359 Golf Charlie, C152 Slant Alpha, request flight services, destination Charlie, Papa Mike, Plant City, cruise altitude 3,500, with information India. On departure, fly heading 050, maintain VFR at or below 1,100, departure 119.65, squawk 2313, Cessna 359 Golf Charlie. Alright, we've got flight following. That'll make things a lot easier. We've got some complexity to manage, so being in constant contact with ATC will help us out. We will request a CTAF frequency change when we get the field in sight. Before we get started with the rest of our flight though, let's take a look at those two awesome payware airports by VerticalSim. Sarasota was on sale in the marketplace, so I had to scoff it up. It's an excellent general aviation and jetliner airport located in Florida, a bit south of Tampa. As you look at the modeling here for the main terminal, it's a bit of a small main terminal, right? But I think it'll be great for flying the CRJ. They've also modeled the interior of the terminal, which is very cool. You can see all of the great details. Look at the signs and the stickers on the jetway. As you move around the airport, you've got all sorts of objects and clutter. Plenty of different places to park. So really an excellent addition. Plant City is a small untowered field that's under the Tampa Bravo, and lots of love and care went into this airport, from all of the signs to the custom buildings to even the fuel pumps. It just looks fantastic. Sarasota ground, Cessna 359 Golf Charlie, Dolphin Aviation, taxi with India for northeast departure. Taxi hold short, runway 32 via Alpha, cross runway 4, Cessna 359 Golf Charlie. Okay, I started moving there before I got a readback correct, which is a no-no, but I'm actually talking to myself in this scenario, so I'm sure my readback was correct. And if I stop here and look over my left shoulder, I've got some traffic that just landed. Unfortunately, it's in a default delivery. I do have AIG traffic installed, but I seem to have goofed up something on it, and lately it's not putting deliveries on things, so I'll sort it out. Okay, we are crossing runway 4 here, headed all the way down to the end of Alpha for runway 32. I suspect that ATC would actually have given me an intersection departure instead of making me go all the way to the end of the runway, but that's what we'll do for this scenario. I imagine ground would have sent me to a run-up area instead of having me do the run-up at the old short line, but it's just me today, so we'll do it right here. Sarasota Tower, Cessna 359 Golf Charlie, holding short, runway 32. Cleared for departure, runway 32, Cessna 359 Golf Charlie. In the background, as always, I've got liveatc.net. It is streaming Sarasota ATC for today. Sounds really busy from the live stream. Because I taxied all the way to the end of the taxiway, you can see that I am getting on at the displaced threshold. So now I've got to get all the way back down to the end of the displaced threshold onto the runway proper, and then we'll go full throttle and take off. While we're getting going here, you're probably wondering about my real-life discovery flight that I've been babbling about for the past couple weeks. I still haven't done it. The weather just has not cooperated, so it got rescheduled twice for weather and then once for instructor availability. So my new date is Tuesday. So if all goes well and the weather looks like, knock on wood, it's going to cooperate. If all goes well and my instructor's schedule doesn't change, then this Tuesday I will have my discovery flight. So I'll be sure to tell you all about it once I have it. Alright, we are up. So we're going to wait until we get past the end of the runway before making any turns. And we need to be at least 400 feet. Normally I'd look for the inner marker beacon for the runway to illuminate on my Cessna here, but I noticed that it doesn't here. I don't know if that's just a glitch or a quirk of the airport. But we made our turn here, and we are keeping at our 1100 altitude restriction. Tower would contact us after we took off and say radar contact once they could see us. As we approached the edge of their airspace, they would tell us to go over to departure, and that would be the frequency that clearance delivery gave us. We'd change frequency and say Sarasota departure, Cessna 359 Golf Charlie, 900 restricted 1100. Departure would probably say cancel altitude restriction, resume on nav, remain clear Tampa Bravo airspace. Because we have flight following, when we got to the edge of Sarasota Departure's airspace, they would hand us over to Tampa Approach, and we would be in contact with them until we got the field for Plant City in sight and got authorization to change our frequency over to CTAF and Squawk VFR. Alright, we are on track. Let's sit back and enjoy that awesome flight simulator scenery. Alright, that was a fun visual VFR flight. I think I did underestimate just how many bodies of water there are in Florida. So there was water everywhere, and at one point I got a little bit confused, but we had a plan B, which was dial in our VORs, figure out where we were at, and make our adjustments accordingly. So it all worked out. We did not bust any airspaces, and we arrived right where we planned. So this was a change back to my old style of making videos. My last couple videos were virtual reality videos, and they were longer. They were almost the full flight. But I noticed I didn't get many views for those or many likes, so I'm taking it that people were voting those down. If you felt otherwise and you want more VR, let me know. Otherwise, I'll mostly stick to this style of video. So if you enjoy content like this, be sure to click that like button, leave me a comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks, as always, for flying along with me, and stay tuned for further flight adventures.